Hi everyone, this is your host Peter Finger. Before we dive into today's episode, I have a special announcement. Mark your calendars for the 2025 Fall Wellness Summit, happening on October 18th at 9 a.m. Pacific. This is our final summit of the year and it's completely free. We're bringing together 4 leading heart-centered hypnotherapy experts who will reveal powerful integrative approaches to transform your practice and deepen your impact. Our experts will be covering a variety of topics including rewiring self-worth and identity at a subconscious level, awakening the body's natural healing capacity, supporting nervous system regulation for lasting change, and harnessing sound and frequency for profound transformation. This is your chance to learn directly from the founders of the Wellness Institute, connect with top professionals in the field, and network with a vibrant community of wellness practitioners. Don't miss the final summit of 2025. Register for free at triadhq.com/WSS. We look forward to seeing you there. Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon, and today I'm joined by Dr. Amy Albright. Amy is the CEO and Head Facilitator at Holon, where science meets spirit to unlock the brain's full potential. With 2 decades of experience transforming lives and guiding companies to exponential growth, Amy brings a rare blend of executive strategy, cognitive psychology, and ancient energetic wisdom. Through her work, Amy helps leaders, visionaries, and seekers remove deep blocks, access higher states of consciousness, and create sustainable transformation. We're excited to have Amy on the show today to explore how Holon is redefining brain optimization through a fusion of advanced neurofeedback, ancient energetic wisdom, and intuitive insight, helping people heal, elevate consciousness, and unlock their fullest human potential. Amy, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Sharlee. It's so lovely to meet you, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Absolutely, as am I. So to get us started, can you share a bit about your journey into the world of neurofeedback and how it led to founding Holon?
Oh, yeah. I didn't really know what neurofeedback was. I had heard about it peripherally for a number of years, which is interesting because I had actually been working and studying in my undergrad quite a bit in the space of neurosciences. But this was a number of years ago and it wasn't popular then. Honestly, it's not super popular now. And what ended up happening was I was a mom with a toddler at home, and I was wanting to be able to have less time doing administrative things. And at the time, I was running a multidisciplinary clinic, and I had been doing that for some time. I wanted to close that, but I needed to find a place just for my practice because I had a brick and mortar practice. This is pre-Zoom, pre even Skype, right? This is a while back.
Right.
And so anyhow, I ended up just Google searching, and I ended up calling everybody in a zip code. I know this seems so random, but this is the miracle that happened. I ended up meeting my colleague, Dr. Drew Pearson, because I was Google searching and looking around for office space in a certain area. And I didn't understand what neurofeedback therapy was when I called him. And I still didn't understand it when I talked with him, really. And then within that week or so, my sister had a massive neurological accident. And I took her to neurologists. I took her to experts. She had imbibed in a small amount of marijuana that was not laced with anything else, with 3 friends or something like that at a college gathering. And she basically had some massive sensory processing disorder. She was basically unable to talk, unable to feed herself, barely able to even be in the world because she was so overwhelmed on a sensory processing level. So she was very young and would have been rendered disabled for the rest of her life. So for me, I didn't understand still what neurofeedback therapy was. But when I took her to all the neurologists and everybody, and I was asking, is this a mental illness? They said, no, it's a sensory processing problem. What solution do you have? Xanax. And I'm like, okay, so she's going to be disabled and doped up about her disability, basically. All right, I don't know what this other guy did. Something about the brain. I'm going to call him back. And so we're still not office mates. But I reached back out to Dr. Drew, and over the course of the next couple of weeks, she was able to talk and feed herself and came back into this world. And that was my segue into working alongside of Dr. Drew, creating this body of medicine that we have co-created together with him as the neuroscientist and me as a thought partner, and incorporating everything at the level that we did today. And it was a huge trust builder for me. You know, like if I didn't have any other choices, it felt like at that time, it felt like I have to trust in this man and in this practice and what this medicine of neurofeedback therapy is. And I had enough context of understanding, but I didn't have anybody that had gone through it. I didn't have any of, you know, I didn't have a referral, and I just had to trust. And I'm so glad I did. My sister completed, she finished her undergraduate, finished a master's degree, wrote a book, Anthropology and Social Change. She is on fire in this world. And, you know, if I had done that differently, would she have always stayed in that place that was quite hell for her? And if he hadn't known what he was doing, where would she be today? Because it's been a long time. This is a long time ago now, 14 years ago or so.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing that you were able to connect the dots for her that way, using something so unique as neurofeedback. Because like you, I don't honestly know too much about what neurofeedback is. So can you take just a quick second and explain what it is and what that process looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, the neurofeedback therapy process works with real-time EEG. So let me back up and talk about what that is. EEG is the electrical study of what's going on in the brain. So it's not going to tell you about your neurotransmitters or necessarily directly your blood flow, although that can be implied. Because if you have a lot of electrical activity, probably you have, you know, more of both of those things. We don't know. But we're basically studying the electrical signals of the brain in real time. And we're taking that through the measurements through the scalp. So it's incredible that we have enough electricity in our brain that it can be measured through the scalp, through the skull. It goes with these sensors that don't put anything in at all. They sense, they put that information into a computer. The computer is set to train the brain. Let's say the person has anxiety. Let's say they have symptoms of depression. Maybe they have sleep problems. Maybe they have attention symptoms. So the computer is set to notice specific sets of patterns in the brain and correlations and communications in that moment that help to counteract whatever it is that person is seeking help for. That information is fed back from the computer about whether they're down that pathway of anxiety or whether they're more relaxed, for instance. That information goes straight back into the brain before the mind can perceive it. But it doesn't go back in through an electrical current. It goes back, the brain is actually perceiving how it's doing through either a sound that it's hearing through headphones or auditorily, and or a sight, maybe something on a screen. But by the time that the mind can understand what has happened, it's like many, many pages of the book have already flipped by, because our brain and the computer relay that information in a way that we don't have any conscious understanding of, and we only can understand what's happening kind of after the fact.
Wow, that is really interesting work. How does Holon's approach to neurofeedback therapy, how does that differ from any form of traditional neurofeedback practice?
Yeah, we have a very different approach. And a lot of it is because Dr. Drew Pearson and I are such deep explorers of what it is to have consciousness. And we're deep explorers of what is the human potential. What is the upper limit that is possible in a gentle, foundational, integrated way for each human? So we're not interested, the majority of what's out there is just focused on pathology. Again, handling these labels, right? These symptoms. And what we see when we see people is potential. We don't see their labels. I mean, we understand them. We're going to work with them as clinicians. We do that holistically as well. It's not just brain. We're both doctors of Chinese medicine, which is an extremely integrated way of being that helps to bridge the understanding of modern medicine, but also these ancient medicines that are very rich and complex and whole body. So we take that perspective and we also then look at their life from this whole perspective. Who is this person at that deeper level? Maybe even beyond the personality, beyond the symptoms. Who are they at that essence level? And what's possible for them? And what's incredible is that my colleague, via basically almost 30 years of practice now, via being an incredibly intellectual, sophisticated academic type mind, via the studies of what it is that Harvard and Stanford and a lot of these research institutes are doing, knows how to safely and effectively apply what it is that is being done in those big research institutes in terms of study in a way that is different, that in a way that is safe and applicable, but is more focused, instead of on the pathology, it's focused on wisdom, consciousness itself, the ability to perceive our reality around us, and also leadership traits. So I would say that lens and that perspective alone is huge. And then also, I think another distinguishing factor is that a lot of people who apply neurofeedback therapy clinically have very much more rudimentary systems of hardware and software, or very much more limited amounts of training. Just as a word about neurofeedback, I believe that people can begin, there's not a license, there's a certificate maybe.
Okay.
And, people can get kind of out there in the world doing this. Maybe they have a PhD in psychology, maybe they're an MFT, maybe they don't have any particular credential or background in neurosciences per se, right? Like these people might have adjunct knowledge, and I want to honor that. I didn't learn what a neurofeedback therapist really needs to learn when I went through medical school. So I am not dismissing that people have huge amounts of knowledge, but they might learn how to use neurofeedback therapy in a 5-day training class.
Got you. Okay.
And that's just something to be aware of that's out there, because we are really making very real-time changes for the brain. The beauty of neurofeedback therapy is that if it's applied by people who are very skilled and trained, it's extremely effective and overall extremely safe. So it's not that I'm not saying it's dangerous and to be scared of it, but just really make sure that you vet deeply. If they're training your brain, how much training do they have in doing that?
Got you.
Right?
Okay.
Because it is your brain.
It is. It is. And that's kind of the scary part about it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you brought that up because, I wouldn't want just anyone kind of digging around in my head. Like you don't want that. And so to be able to make sure that, whichever provider you choose is adequately trained and prepared to do the level of work that you guys are doing.
That's right.
So Holon has multiple programs, if I'm understanding correctly. Can you kind of briefly lay those out for us? And then we'll go back and explore them deeper one by one as we move throughout our chat.
Oh, sure. Okay. So the signature program, the one that people are most interested about because it merges the mystical or that more deep aspect of self or of reality with the quantifiable and the scientific. It is a brain program, and it is a 5-day long on-site, and we call that our signature intensive. So I can definitely talk more about that in a moment. We also do offer for the folks that have graduated from the signature intensive the ability to work with Dr. Drew remotely. So we ship a headset and a computer and the equipment, and he does remote real-time sessions. So you're not running this by yourself. It's safe. It's as if you're sitting in the same room in that regard. So he can run those remotely. That's a separate program that's ongoing for graduates of the intensive. And then we also have the ability to work with me one-on-one. I have a one-time session that would be called an activation session, but I can also do ongoing coaching and advising and mentoring for folks. As a part of my background, not only as a doctor of Chinese medicine, I also have a very strong business background. We can talk about that later as well, but I can do anything from helping people to hone their intuition to scaling and selling their business, hundreds of millions of dollars businesses, larger businesses, billions of dollars business. So we've got me in that one-on-one, either as a one-time or ongoingly. And then I also offer mystery school training, and I call this a modern mystery school. It's not rooted in ancient Egypt or the other old lineages. It's actually what I have learned on the job in working with people one-on-one and in small groups for the last 23 years, how I understand the way that we move things through and process, how I understand the way that our energy systems and the way that we actually are relating is working together. So I go through that, and that's a 3-month program online with an optional on-site retreat.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then I also do talking, and I do all kinds of other things, go and help facilitate other organizations and groups and things like that. But yeah, that's the bulk of what we offer.
Awesome. Well, if you don't mind, let's get started. I'm really interested in the 5-day intensive program. You mentioned that it's on site. Can you tell us more about that, what it looks like for someone that's interested in participating?
Sure. We work with less than 30 humans a year in this capacity. It is a massive lift for us, and we do it with so much love and passion. There are other clinics or places that don't necessarily come with that same kind of level that we have of care and investment that we have in the folks that we work with. We invite people into a beautiful home environment. They stay on site to where everything's happening. The location of the home is in the woods of Nevada City, so it's a wooded property. It is serene. It is beautiful. We have a chef come on site. And then myself and Dr. Drew basically step people through this process that both works with an incredible amount of neurofeedback therapy. Let's say kind of like marathons, plural amounts of neurofeedback therapy, along with some of the most advanced wellness equipment in the world, which I can also expand on if you're curious about that. Sometimes people really want to hear about the equipment. And then they also get one-on-ones with me and my capacity to be able to see at a very, very deep level what it is that they are struggling with, who it is that they really are beneath the personality, but beneath the illusion, beneath the rules that they're maybe trying to follow about what it means to be a good parent or a good whatever, and how to have them really drop into themselves. So I'm both opening the space for them and also helping make sure that they integrate and that they have a frame. During the time that we're together, we get massive, massive changes in perspective and neurological function. It's actually a very radical shift. And we show people their before EEG, which is that electrical study of their brain. And we show them their after, which their after, because we have to do this part while we're together, is actually when they're really tired, right? Because they've just run all those neurological marathons. And despite that, their brains show huge improvement. And what we know is that as they go home and sleep for a few days and recover, and as then the brain has time to grow in with neuroplasticity, what ends up happening is this massive amount of growth and these massive changes that actually doesn't. So a lot of times when we go to a retreat or we go to a conference or workshop, we leave all pumped up or we leave relaxed. And then we go back to our house and we're like, we still want to kill those kids. We still are having rage on the freeway, or we're still circling on those same thoughts. And we're like, damn, that was a nice break from my reality. Yeah. But this reality thing is still kind of the same thing that when I left it. So I would say that really everybody's result when they're leaving is a greater sense of peace, a greater sense of having less reactivity. They're able to have an event happen and take a pause before they say something they don't mean to, or before they go down those same kind of ways of thinking. And that gives everybody the ability to be much more present and move from wisdom, be able to see themselves kind of from that neutral perspective rather than being, nose up against the glass, trying to, change something. And with neuroplasticity, that effect grows in over time so that it's not like, oh, well, that was cool, and now I'm back to the old me.
Yeah.
But instead that it actually changes, and it changes over such a story, like a long arc of time, that people sometimes don't realize how much, unless they ask their loved ones, their colleagues, that kind of a thing. And then other people are like, oh, they came back real different, and they continue to be like amazingly different, So that goes on for 6 months, I would say. And often it can be kind of even out further than that. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. And, this actually brought me to a question that probably should have asked before. But who comes to Holon? Like, what type of people benefit from your programs? And like you mentioned, what types of changes that they may see? How are they experiencing these changes? What does success look like?
Yeah. So who is it and how do they experience those changes? So because we work with so few people, we like to work with people who we feel like have a lot of bandwidth that can be expanded out into, who have a deep desire to be able to make positive change in the world. We run, and it's an expensive program, and not that many people are able to come. And so what we're doing in our heart of hearts, though, is changing those thought leaders and those game changers, those pioneers and visionaries. Maybe they're leaders of organizations, nonprofits, whatever it is. We want people that can go out and spread the positive change, because the reason why we're doing this is for greater good. We could go pick an easier career. I think there's a lot easier things to do, but this is what we do, and that's why. So we look for that, and we also look for people who, geek out potentially on the neuroscience part, because it's pretty interesting, and it's really cool to see your own brain on the screen and have it all explained. For those, it's almost like having a astrology reading or like getting back the results of one of those big predictive tests, like the DISC or something. It's like, whoa, how do you guys know that much about me? But it's done in love. It's not done with kind of a scrutiny, and it's done inside of that atmosphere of anything that we don't like on this that they can address and work with, right? So it's fun. But I would say that how they experience it while they're here, they have a cup of tea and a mug in their hand, and they're like happy, and they're just like cruising around. And we might be working with what would look like in other contexts quite difficult work. Sometimes early childhood traumas are coming up. Deepest fears are definitely intentionally being addressed. But because of the held, loving, natural, nurturing environment that we have where we are really here with people, because we are creating with this neurofeedback therapy both an increased capacity to be with those things on a neurological level, but almost like a natural anesthetic is the way I like to describe it. Like if you can have a memory come up, but it doesn't rock you, now you have the working space inside of you, right? If you have an insight about something, if you have the ability to move into forgiveness and allow yourself to release something that maybe not in any other context you would have access to in that way. So it's really phenomenal. People have, they might have an afternoon where 20 minutes of it, they're really tired. They might have 10 minutes where they need to cry. But I'd say the majority of it is just that image that I'm painting, which is very accurate.
Okay.
They have their tea mug and they're cruising around really happy. And we're like, kind of sit over here now. We're going to hook you up to this. And they're like, okay, lovely. And, so what I love about this paradigm is that it kind of goes in the face of the idea that suffering has to be had in order to be well, or that we work again inside of that broken model, right? We're not looking at the pathology, we're looking at the potential. So we hold open a broad space and we trust people as they move through their process. And we also trust ourselves as experienced facilitators. So the experience is like that. And then when they go home, they always, not always, but many times they'll think that we're just kidding, that they'll be tired because they feel so happy while they're here. And then they get home and they're like, oh, wait a minute, really, really, really tired. And then if they try to get on their emails too fast, which might be a couple of days they need to take off before they do any kind of linear stuff, they might get cranky. But if they listen to us and they actually take a couple of days off, they won't be cranky. And it's because their brain is too taxed to do that. And that's often what happens if we get cranky is it's because we've exhausted our brains or our beings too much. So as long as they follow our recommendations, everything's pretty smooth and flowy. And then, they get to go home to what could look like the same life, but it feels quite different. People receive them in that way. It's amazing.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Most of us spend more time at work than anywhere else doing anything else. So why not spend that time in a job you love? Introducing Triad's Jobs Marketplace, the only job site dedicated specifically to behavioral and mental health professionals. Featuring more than 1,000 open jobs from dozens of behavioral and mental health employers, and searchable by location, professional field, employment type, specialization, and more. Jobs Marketplace helps you find your next career opportunity. Full-time, part-time, or gig time, make the most of your time. To access Jobs Marketplace, register for your free professional account at hellotriad.com/BHT. That's hellotriad.com/BHT, and then click to Jobs Marketplace. If you're already a member of the Triad community, visit app.hellotriad.com/jobs. That's app.hellotriad.com/jobs. Visit us today and take your next career step tomorrow.
Yeah, it sounds really, really cool. It definitely does. Okay.
Yeah.
And so once a patient has graduated from the 5-day intensive program and they want more, what does that look like? You mentioned that you have individual sessions with you, but then there are also individual sessions with Dr. Drew as well. Can we talk about how a human makes a choice between those things and what do the recommendations look like? What does that feel like for them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think even before a next step as a program, part of the program that I didn't describe, I just described the on-site. But really what we do is a deep preparation. We go through their whole medical history and we spend time with them, at least an hour, just going over goals and what it is that they're looking at more than that, honestly, closer to 2 hours before they get here. And then after they leave, we provide a lot of ongoing support for about a month after. So they can text us with any question. We also provide them a very robust supplement protocol and a lot of recommendations. You know, you can take magnesium baths, which is sometimes known as an Epsom salt bath. You can do these various things at home. Here's how to take really good care of yourself. We ask them and co-create with them how they want their take-home protocol to go so that they do a really good job of self-care. You know, we have nutrition shifts, all that. So we provide support in that way. And then, yeah, if they want to come back, some people come back to the entire 5-day intensive again, maybe 6 months or a year later.
Okay.
Sometimes the first time they come through, they're like, wow, well, no, I'm no longer kind of trapped inside of my own illusion, inside of reactivity, dealing with sleep problems and cranky with my spouse. I kind of wonder what's next. Right. And so they show up and they're like, can you help me be more intuitive? Can you help me be in an embodied, regal way as I do my leadership at work or as I interact in these ways? Like, what's that next frontier, whatever it is that their desire? So sometimes they come back through. Sometimes they just become an active and vibrant member of our community because we offer events and things that are for the community. Sometimes they might enroll back they might come over into the mystery school. I teach a lot of the energy anatomy that kind of goes beyond the acupuncture meridians, of course, are energy anatomy, right? It's very detailed, but I teach energy anatomy that extends beyond that. So maybe they want to come back and step into the mystery school program where they understand that at greater detail. And they learn how to kind of in these meditative states, work with their own anatomy and shift their state of being. I might add, just as a side note, one of those energy anatomy practices is available on the website. If anybody wants to just get a free download, I know that there's very few seats to the top tier program. There's other seats to other programs. My heart of hearts, I want everybody to have as much free access to good stuff as possible. So the download of we call it the Holon breath practice, is available on our website, holonexperience.com. And that actually it's maybe some people would call it a meditation. I'm not saying it's not a meditation, but it's a guided practice to actually work with the energy of your body, to work with yourself in a different way. And what I have found in feedback is that even experienced meditators of decades find a distinct shift in their felt experience of reality immediately when they do it the first time, most people. And if not the first time, then it will come if people practice it. And you can practice it eyes open or eyes closed. I teach it in that recording that's on the website, eyes closed. But you can do it in a very light and easy way through your day. And it helps with regulating stress. And it helps to stay out of the illusion, right? Out of the personality conflicts, out of the mind. We're still able to use the mind like a tool, but, not trapped in it.
Right.
So anyway, I wanted to make mention of that, not necessarily as it's not a program, but it is an offering that is very important to me that we share about and get people to know. I think we would all just be in such a better world if everybody could just breathe and remember themselves to be more than what they think they are.
Absolutely. Completely agree with you. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. And so I actually took a minute or two to just look at your website and, peruse it, just kind of read a bit more about what your programs offer and you and Dr. Drew, so I could have just a little basic knowledge. And one of the things that you mentioned there is that you described how we often as humans over leverage our brains and that it's almost like driving with your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time. And you kind of alluded to that a bit about bringing ourselves kind of out of that, stuck in that pattern of going. So can we talk a bit about, or can you explain how Holon helps bring the brain back into homeostasis?
Yeah, absolutely. So first with the gas and brake analogy, and then I'll cover the homeostasis. Really great question. So I would say that the majority of the way that we have been indoctrinated into thinking about ourselves and our life is that we are taught that we are supposed to be neurotic and we are rewarded for working too hard and being a little bit crazy.
Yep.
So just to call that out as a schema that we're individually all walking through, and then collectively we have bought in on.
Yep.
And what that can look like in the brain is, I'd say, two different patterns, but I'm not saying they don't happen all the time in the same person. One pattern is a humongous amount of fear. So we, in the desire to belong, in the desire to be included in society, in the desire to make money and not die of starvation, which lives there as a subconscious thought as a mammal, we often have a huge amount of fear signals. And those fear signals, at our understanding as of right now, probably a lot originate actually in the cerebellum. A lot of people will blame the amygdala, and they'll also think there's only one of those, but there's actually two. A lot of the information, if not all the information from the amygdala, is actually about that safety is coming from the cerebellum. So basically, we can take a huge amount of our bandwidth, which we should be driving forward in that car with that accelerator, and we can then have a huge amount of fear signaling, which has us maybe pumping the brakes, and we're like, oh, I don't know why this doesn't feel good, right? And so that's one picture, and it can then informs what the default mode and the salient networks are doing. And those are, who am I, and what do I consider to be normal or okay? And also, how do I make decisions? And how we make decisions, or how we even frame decisions for ourselves neurologically, consciously, energetically, emotionally, frames our reality. If we believe that we have two terrible options only, right? That's a very different thing than saying, ooh, I prefer this one over that one, and being able to see options that we didn't see before. So
Correct.
this foot on the accelerator as we're moving through life, and then that fear can really create a massive amount of energy drain and emotional fatigue. So then another picture of this, and this is going to be more for those like serious type A types that aren't just worried, but they're like always in action. Kind of that classic startup, or the CEO, or the working mom who's a single mom and works, till midnight every night by the time she can go to bed, right?
Yep.
And that might, and there's also a huge amount of worrying, and a kind of a single focus. Might be make the money, keep the baby safe. It might be drive the business, whatever it is. They have kind of a single focus. And a lot of times that single focus represents as a hot spot in the brain, maybe about the size of a quarter. And it's often in either the front, it's either in the left or the right forehead area, or sometimes it's at the top of the head. And those little hot spots, that little quarter-sized area of the brain, can cause a 30% pull of all the power neurologically. So imagine you're wanting to connect with those children that you're trying to desperately defend, or you're wanting to be able to create bonds with those coworkers, or whatever it is. But because of the amount of that hotspot pulling, there isn't actually enough electrical or maybe even neurochemical resource to be able to have that connection. So this is another version of kind of that same thing. We can be driving. We can push the pedal to the metal. But in this case, it's almost like the brake is on very consistently, and we can't necessarily see through it. And then we're wondering what that smoking smell is, why it smells like something's burning. And that's us. So when we go in with neurofeedback therapy, what we're looking to do is create homeostasis. And I'm so glad that you asked that word, or framed it in that word, because even though we're aspirational, ultimately all we can do is bring the brain back into its perfect balance. So we might tell that one area that's about the size of a quarter here in the forehead or on the top of the head, chill out, chill. That's enough out of you. Thank you. Right. So the brain is hooked up. It's going over into the computer, and the computer is feeding back. And if they're trying to over leverage that drive from that one little spot and burn too much power there, they're not given that sound auditorily. They're not given that visual on the screen. And so their brain has to figure it out. And the mind has no idea. Sometimes people get all tripped out. I don't think I can do neurofeedback. I don't know how to make my brain do that. You don't. You also don't know how to make your heart beat right now. So there's a lot of stuff that we are actually not in charge of that is happening. Mm-hmm. And so the brain figures out, because it knows that it's supposed to be hearing that thing, seeing that thing. Okay, it figures out a different way to be. And it actually reroutes all of that electrical pathway down different routes. And it starts to learn to use more advantageous pathways, maybe ones that bring in more sense of harmony and connection and safety, things like that. So that's in the case of an overactive area. We also can have underactive areas. We can also have underactive overall power to neurons, because the neurons actually receive their power from other cells in the brain, glial cells and astrocytes. So we might be bringing up power, and we might be having areas that aren't talking to each other in the brain, or aren't talking very efficiently, finally decide to make friends and pass communication in the ways that they are designed to. And that can change how somebody feels in a massive way. So effectively, what we're doing is taking in whole brain perspective, thousands of data points, how they all correlate with each other. And we're bringing that symphony, because it's not just it's not even just waves and it's not just structures and we're not just neurochemicals. It's taking the entire perspective of how our brain is functioning and bringing it into this symphony. Once it learns a better way to be, the brain does not want to go back. Especially, and this is why we love the intensive format. If you can give that signal often enough in a short period of time, it kind of forgot how to be like all strung out and worried about everything. Because it's like, oh, wait a minute. You get enough of a signal in a short enough time with enough precision. And now that's the new normal. And then that normal grows in over time as more neural connections or nerve cells themselves start to grow in. So that's part of that 6 month kind of after process.
Got you. Wow, that's incredibly powerful. Wow.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, it almost seems like you guys are unlocking maybe even some supernatural capacity here, because these aren't things that I'm not a single mom, but I am that working mom, multiple jobs. And it is like, go, 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 make sure the people are good, make sure this happens, make sure
this happens. Gotta pack the lunch, gotta make sure that whatever.
It is. And it's really difficult to turn that off. Like I don't always know how to turn it off. And it does, like I said, it feels supernatural that somebody can. How do you help people safely do that and be able to just compartmentalize that way? If that's the correct word to use.
It seems like it should be compartmentalization. And I'm really glad you used that word, because that would be the normal way of thinking about it. So if I could offer a lot of our understanding of psychology or reality comes from faulty constructs, right? Like the best we had at that time in science or in a standardized way of knowing. So that pie chart of life. Here's my spirituality, here's my family, here's my health. And it's like, okay, but at the end of the day, we kind of know if mama's not happy, nobody's happy. And we kind of know that you're you no matter where you are and no matter what you're doing. It's the same you, right? And it can be that same voice that's in your head freaking out with all the different, it can freak out in all those different directions. But it's ultimately that same voice. So it seems like it's a compartmentalization, but what it is in a way is actually the removal of that which has compartmentalized us, right? So it's a being able to trust in ourselves and to be strong enough to be neurologically and emotionally and even spiritually resilient enough to trust that everything is okay, that we are enough. Because a lot of the stuff that's driving us is like a little bit of a misfire, like the mammal brain's going, but the babies might die. And it's like, they won't die if you forgot to pack them their sandwich. They actually will not. They will
sure, Dr. Amy?
Sure. So I'm just offering that, like so many things, and I'm talking about that. I'm some of the clients that I've worked with in the past might be running multi-billion-dollar companies, and I'm like, yeah, you need to chill out and think of yourself as slightly less important, and be able to broaden the lens with which you look at life, and allow for other people to flourish and shine instead of trying to do everything for them, or you know what I mean, like. We sometimes are trying to push that rock up the hill in ways that we don't know, because it's part of the indoctrination that we've all stepped into by being born in this time period. So it's a huge frame shift, and there's a lot of grounding into the practicality, because ultimately we are here to help people who are already performing really well in all their areas or a lot of the areas of their life do even better. We're not looking to create people who are like, I'll just om in an ashram and like hope the kids are okay, or like the business will be fine and I'll just not look at the P&L anymore. Like that's not it either, right? But to be able to find this way where we move, a lot of it is just through the neurological kind of like hooks, like the barbs. If you walk through a rose garden, it's supposed to be a beautiful journey, but if your clothes are snagged thousands of times and then now you're, right? But if we unhook those things neurologically and emotionally and through our perception of ourself and what's possible, then we actually can just enjoy that walk through the rose garden, from a totally different perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay. And so are there other tools that you use other than the equipment just for the neurofeedback and EEG? Are there other things like breath work? I know cold plunging is like the newest thing. So what other tools do you guys use, and how do they play in rewiring the nervous system?
Yeah, each of them is going to have a slightly different strategy, but we do use a lot of different tools. The cold plunge is actually broken and we're getting a new one in, but a lot of that we use that for is just getting people through that. Oh, I can't do this. And it's like, oh, yes, you can. Oh, yes, you can. Right. And so when placed in the right part of a program, it can be, it's kind of that trust fall or that bungee cord jump or whatever. Right. But it's a little safer. It's just cold. So, but it also has a huge dopamine surge and all kinds of biological resets going on, right? So that's beautiful. We use sound therapy. We use light. So light stimulated into the eyes for those that it's not contraindicated for, like seizures and whatnot. We love the neurovisor. That's a device that we use and we often talk about. The neurovisor entrains the brain to move by what we can see in our pilot studies, 2 or 3 standard deviations from where it's at. So, and it depends on what type of settings you're using when you're using, if you do decide to use the neurovisor. It can help to downregulate the default mode network. It can upregulate the amount of gamma that somebody's having or an amount of alpha. It can help people to have more joy, that kind of a thing. So we've seen a lot of clinical efficacy with that. And we use the neurovisor as a primer often. So if we utilize that, then they're more neuroplastic in that moment. And then we do the neurofeedback therapy and get even better results. So a lot of these things actually work very harmoniously. Just to be clear, I'm not giving medical advice, nor am I advising for anybody to use neurovisor if it's a contraindication. However, I do like to talk about it because it's not a cheap device, but it is not that expensive. And it can be utilized by a whole family, not necessarily little kids, because that's not part of they're not developed enough necessarily for that, but friends and people can split the cost. And again, I want to bring as much low cost or free medicine forward to as many people as possible. So I wanted to be able to talk about that one. Let's see, we have a cyclic variable altitude chamber. So imagine if you are like Luke Skywalker in that little fighter pod thing. I don't even remember. I'm not really that much of a Star Wars fan, but it's like, it is some like techie looking thing. And you're in a little space pod looking thing with a window. And it's a lot of people have heard of hypobaric chambers. And this is actually hyperbaric. So it's incredibly effective for brain recovery and blood flow and circulation to the brain. It's also amazing for hormone systems. And, it's kind of basically like a cellular workout, but in a way, what we're using it for actually is for recovery. And it just helps people to feel really refreshed. It's very dramatic. It's very like sci-fi movie kind of looking thing. So those are just some of the things that we do. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. And so you've mentioned a couple of times actually that people that come to Holon aren't just necessarily looking for healing, but they are people that are trying to amplify their gifts and generally people that are leaders that have a big presence and lead other people. So how do you help those people unlock their full potential? And you did mention earlier that you go through goal setting as well. So if we can discuss the goal setting process too.
Yeah. A lot of these people that we end up working with would say, hey, look, I've already conquered. I made the money. I built the thing. I had the kids. I did whatever their accomplishments that they thought that they wanted. And then they're like, yeah, but I know there's more. And I don't mean more money or more whatever. They're kind of over those accolades. They've realized that none of that stuff buys them that quality of life and that feeling of real value and meaning. They maybe haven't fully felt like they've been able to leave their legacy. A lot of them have been trapped in the level of the mind or inside of just data or whatever, kind of performative stuff in the world. And I would say that a lot of those folks that come to us are really looking for heart connection, relationships, and also just to know themselves as a more spiritual being. And I don't mean by that religious, but just who is this soul that I am, right? So they're often in these bigger questions. And at the same time, again, they haven't necessarily stepped away from all those responsibilities. So it's our work to be able to bring people into that deeper sense of meaning and purpose in their lives, that deeper heart expression. So there's goal setting, and then there's also just the intricacies of connecting the dots. They have one-on-ones with me because we only work with 3 people at a time.
Okay.
So they have one-on-ones with me each of the full days that they're here. And it's during that time that we'll get into the how does this land in your relationship with your partner, your spouse? Like everything that you're having here in perspective and everything that you're shifting to know yourself to be how do you then approach life back home? Or how do you reframe potentially the past experiences and be able to forgive people, forgive yourself, bring the wisdom forward, all of that. So there's huge unlocks that are available to folks, and we can move them through quite a lot very, very quickly, not just neurologically, but in their framing, in their presence for what they believe themselves to be, right? Not just a bag of meat that's robot moving through life, but like, maybe I'm a soul. Maybe what is all of that, right? Like, what is this that is kind of the deeper aspects and meanings to life? And am I safe enough now to explore it? Yeah. So that's a lot of the process, and it's, I think, a beautiful counterbalance to the nerdiness of, all the brain talk and the,
Yeah.
yeah, you got wires off your head, but we're not like getting after you like you're a lab rat or something, right? Like, we see you, we honor you, we're inviting the real you out, It's safe to laugh here, it's safe to cry here, it's safe to be full you here, and really be able to put these puzzle pieces together. Because I think that the pacing of life and the big traumas maybe that people have walked through, and then the low grade traumas of the amount of stress and kind of like daily damage, those daily hits that we
Right.
take, we end up just needing a safe place to unpack our whole self, and have people believe in us. And it's amazing what can happen in that. Even if we weren't doing brain stuff, just that part alone.
Right. I was going to say, just even hearing about it, it sounds really amazing and life-changing for everyone who spent some time in your programs.
Yeah.
So for listeners that might be curious about stepping into this work, what's the best way to begin? I know you mentioned that you have breath training available on your website, but how can someone know if Holon is right for them, and, how can they move forward?
Yeah, definitely exploring more on the website is a great idea. We put a lot of education out there in addition to talking about what we do. That's holonexperience.com. If they really want to do a deeper dive into more and more of all of it, there's a lot of podcasts that people can, if they wanted to just search my name, there's more information there as well. If they're interested in actually applying for or exploring applying for a program, we do have an application form online, and I read each of those myself. We carefully select and offer what it is that we feel like is the right fit for folks. So if they're not sure, they don't have to be sure, right? And we're gonna look over those applications, and then potentially also meet one-on-one and be able to talk it all through, or just point somebody in that right direction to a different resource that maybe, like the Neurovisor, for instance, or one of our other programs, a one-time offer, a one-time session with me, for instance, that kind of a thing. So people don't have to know the answers. They just need to go in and explore and see what feels and fits right, and we'll help with that process.
Thank you for that. And Dr. Amy, I have really appreciated speaking with you today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Sharlee. It's been lovely. Appreciate you. Yeah.
And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. Make sure to follow us on our social media at Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and more. We're even on YouTube at Behavioral Health Today. And if you like our show, give us 5 stars and leave us a review. That helps our show get discovered and share the valuable insights in each episode. As always, the resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.